Coming up on Double Tap TV.
We answer the question, what does accessibility mean at Google? Stephen Scott sits down with the man in charge to find out.
The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
There will be several dozen shows trickling in over the months.
Accessibility.
We're actually running a pilot scheme with the CNIB at the moment.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Double Tap TV. I am Mark Aflalo with Stephen Scott. Thank you guys for being here. We've got an awesome episode lined up for you guys. We're going to be talking all about accessibility with one of the biggest tech companies in the world. But before we get to that, I want to remind you, if you want to send us an email, please do that, feedback@ami.ca. We love getting your feedback. We love getting your opinions. And we love talking to you guys. So if you want to do that on Twitter, it's @DoubleTapCanada, and use that hashtag #AskDoubleTap so we can get to those questions on a future show. So, Stephen, what is accessibility when you put it in the terms of a large tech giant, the capacity of Google? When we look at different companies around the world, you'd think that every single company should be an evangelist about accessibility. But then you look at these big giant companies like Google, like Apple, like Microsoft, and they seem to be taking a major stance when it comes to talking about, or at least, starting the conversation about accessibility. But shouldn't it start, absolutely everywhere?
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you, Mark? But the reality is that's not really the case. We see these huge companies, it's almost the wrong way around, really, huge companies investing time and effort and energy into making their products accessible, making their work environments accessible, all of those things. Yet when we were at CES, we were talking to companies and asking the questions about accessibility, and we're talking small startups to medium-sized companies, and they didn't really have an answer about accessibility. They knew roughly what it was. They knew generally it was a good idea, but they didn't really get into any great discussion or ability to tell us what they were planning to do with their products. So, despite Apple and Samsung and Amazon and Google all putting huge amounts of effort in, the smaller companies, the medium-sized companies just aren't there yet.
Stephen, do you think these companies are doing this because they know that they have to lead by example and get those smaller companies to kind of, get on board with everything that's going on? Or is it just because of the sheer size and span? I mean, you look at a company like Microsoft and Samsung and Apple and Google, I mean, they span across the globe. They've got offices absolutely everywhere. So they employ people of all shapes and sizes, people with disabilities, people without disabilities. Is it because of the culture at the companies, or do they just feel that if they share the proper methods and the proper message, that other companies will indeed follow their lead?
Well, I think there's probably some truth to that, but I think it's also because of legislation, frankly. A lot of these companies are based in the United States, and these companies have a legal obligation to make their products accessible. So arguably it's legislation that's driving this more than the, it's good to do or it's a nice thing to do approach. Every company should be doing this, right? And when you build a product, if you build an app, if you build a device that has got physical buttons on it, you need to make sure that every step of that process is something which can be achieved by anybody, irrespective of whether you're blind or you're deaf or you have issues with motor skills or motility issues, whatever it might be. You've got to think about this. You've got to make your product accessible, and that's something that we're going to hear today. Google, one of the big companies, has done.
Stephen, when we sat down with Ricardo Wagner over at Microsoft, or when we talk about companies like Apple at WWDC, these companies build in the tools that consumers need and developers need to make their apps and make their software and make their websites accessible already. And I'm sure we're going to be having this conversation 10 years down the road. But should that not be the norm now, with all these tools that are in place for these people, for anybody to build accessible websites and to build accessible apps? Should it not just be the norm? Why are we having this conversation now?
Yeah, it should. But unfortunately, when it comes to disabled people, we're kind of at the back of the queue, Mark. We're not in the national conversation. You think about how many news stories feature disabled people. How many times do you see a disabled actor on screen playing the part of, not somebody who's disabled, but someone who perhaps is a serial killer in a drama? You don't see those things. The conversation about disability is still very much behind the times. And of course, that's the reason why it's not in our psyche. We hear so much about race, we hear so much about gender, we hear so much about issues relating to sexuality, but we never hear about disability. And unfortunately, that's just the reality. But the weird thing is that we then have all these big companies doing great work. The big 4 companies are doing huge amounts of work, which is brilliant for us. And actually for a lot of, especially blind people, Mark, I've got to say, I think blind people have, it's a good time to be blind. And I don't say that flippantly, but it is, because the technology has made it possible for us to do so much more things I could never have done 10 years ago, I can do today. I mean, the idea of picking up my smartphone, which is essentially just a sheet of glass, and being able to bank, being able to go online, buy products, search the internet, just make a phone call, send a text, go on Facebook, go on WhatsApp, do all these things. It's all possible thanks to this technology and thanks to these companies. So happy to praise them. Of course, we'll criticize them from time to time. That's okay too. But we're really pleased that, finally our voices have been listened to by someone, and hopefully that will encourage the others to play their part.
We've talked about accessibility at Microsoft, obviously, with that interview with Ricardo Wagner. If you want to go to ami.ca, you can see that interview that we did. We've talked about accessibility at Apple when it comes to WWDC. We talk about accessibility at a lot of major companies. So it makes sense that today we're going to focus on what is accessibility and what is the accessibility culture at a company the size of Google. Now, Stephen, you had the opportunity to sit down with the head of accessibility at Google. His name is Christopher Padno, and that really interesting interview is coming up on this week's edition of Double Tap TV. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, but before we do that, I'm going to remind you that if you guys want to get involved, if you've got questions, if you've got opinions, please email feedback@ami.ca. We get back to every single email that you guys send. On Twitter, if you want to get in touch, we have @DoubleTapCanada. Don't forget to use the hashtag AskDoubleTap, and we'll get back to you there as well. We really encourage you to send us any kind of communication so that we can get your kind of feedback on exactly what we do here on Double Tap TV. So we take a quick break, we come back, and we join Stephen Scott in conversation with the head of accessibility at Google, Christopher Padno. This is Double Tap TV. We're back in just a moment.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We are back on Double Tap TV. I am Mark Aflalo, and Stephen Scott is standing by with our guest for this week's show. Before we get to that, though, I want to remind you, feedback@ami.ca is our email address. Please use it if you want to share your opinions or if you want to get in touch with us. On Twitter, it's @DoubleTapCanada, and don't forget to use the hashtag AskDoubleTap. So, the question we ask ourselves this week is, what is accessibility like and the culture like in accessibility at one of the biggest technology companies in the world? Well, when Stephen was at TechShare Pro, it was hosted at Google's European headquarters. And while everybody was whining and dining behind them, he had the opportunity to sit down with their head of accessibility, Christopher Padno, at Google's HQ.
My name is Christopher Padno. I'm head of accessibility programs at Google.
It is great to have you here, Chris, and I'm really, really excited to talk to you about what is available from Google in terms of accessibility. This show is aimed at people who are looking to get into the world of accessible tech in some form. Maybe someone who's recently lost their sight or is going through the process of perhaps maybe changing technologies. And I just want people to know what Google has on offer. So tell me about accessibility from Google.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement. Our mission statement is to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. And to that end, we take this accessibility part really seriously. So if you look at our Android platform, for example, we have TalkBack. It's our version of a screen reader. And we've invested heavily in it over the past couple of years, and we're really proud to where it's come. We also have support for Braille, using BrailleBack. But we also have magnifiers. We have select to speech, so you can select a section of text. It can be read to you. We have colorblind modes. We have black and white mode. Depending on your needs, we have a plethora of tools that will allow you to customize it to meet your expectations.
Okay, so you've got so many options available, which is fantastic. And you've built all of this into the core product. So we're talking here off-the-shelf products. These aren't apps that you add in later or anything you need to bolt on to a device. It's all built in.
Well, with Android, because we have so many different manufacturers who make devices, there is a little bit of hunt and grab. So, for example, Samsung has their own based off of the work that we do. But anyone on an Android device can download the accessibility suite and install it.
Right, so yeah, there are certain developers now, as you say, certain companies that are doing their own thing. But if you bought, for example, a Google Pixel phone, it's all there. And that's what they call stock Android, essentially, isn't it? That's raw, Android raw, if you like.
Yeah. Pure.
Pure. That's probably nicer than raw, yeah. But yeah, pure Android. And that's actually, and one thing we talk about in the show a lot is, when it comes to buying an Android device, what the best options might be. And we often recommend that to people. We say, go for pure Android, because then you get exactly what you're getting all the latest updates and all of that. And that's another point, isn't it? That these devices are regularly updated. So even though you may go out and buy a new phone, you don't necessarily have to buy next year's new phone. It'd be great if they did, I'm sure, but the point is they don't have to, because these phones are regularly updated and the accessibility is updated along with it.
Multiple times a year, we do updates to our accessibility suite.
Can we talk about computers? Because Chromebooks are fascinating to me. I think they're great little machines. And what is great about them is for education purposes, they're wonderful. But for anyone who, and let's be honest, most of us nowadays spend most of our time online, on websites, not necessarily using apps as much perhaps as you used to, because a lot of the services like Microsoft Office are available online. You can use them that way. So the need to have a device with all the power to run photo applications or video applications might not be necessary for you. So a Chromebook offers the opportunity to get online at a decent price, but also giving you accessibility. Tell us about those.
Well, to answer your first, to sort of key off something you said a moment ago, the Chromebook is actually much more functional than it has been, because we've added the ability to run Android apps on Chromebooks. So you can run an Android app in Chromebook, even with accessibility mode. So in those situations where you need to have a native application, an application that's not web-based, you can even use Chrome for that as well. This is separate from accessibility, but I think it's important for people to realize that it's more functional than just a glorified web browser.
Yeah, it's not just a web browser. You can run apps on it as well. So it has got those functions to it, and again, that's accessible.
Yes.
The screen reader that's inside a Chromebook, how does that work? Is that different to what you would get on, say, a Pixel phone?
Yeah, it is. It's actually something we've spent a lot of time over the past year as well. You can see the pattern here.
Yeah.
Google's really making accessibility a priority. The Chromebox screen reader built into any Chrome OS device has been rewritten recently, and it is far much more powerful. It is far more usable. And if you've ever tried Chrome in the past and you didn't like it, you should try it again. The water's fine. We've really made some significant improvements in it. We also have the Select to Speak, and we have a docked magnifier that goes up to 20x. We've really been thoughtful in terms of the needs of the users, and we've added a bunch of great and exciting technologies into it. And it's very easy to access these things. There's a little accessibility icon in the tray. You can go there and enable all the things that you want.
Okay, so you've got phones, you've got computers, but of course another area now which is huge is smart speakers. And of course the Nest Home is the new name for the Google Home, and the Mini and the Max and all of that.
And the Hub.
And the Hub as well. Yeah. So let's talk about those and how you've designed them. What makes that stand out next to, say, an Amazon Echo device, which of course I guess is your closest competitor?
I don't mean to knock our friends at Amazon, but I think no, I really don't. I think what really stands out for us is the ability to recognize both the voice and come up with really thoughtful answers. The function, sort of the general functionality of play music, turn on my lights, take the dog out. Everyone has the same kind of skills. But I think the quality of the responses that we give and our ability to recognize multiple languages, accents, I think that's what really brings it out, is our ability to understand what people want and give them what they need in time.
But that represents a new way of computing, doesn't it? Where you can interact with a device without the need for sight, which is very interesting to a blind audience, of course, because you're in a position now where you can get answers to questions, whereas before you would have to sit down and, like most of us would do, Google it. That is the verb everyone uses, isn't it? But that's what you do. You would go onto a computer or onto your phone and you would Google for an answer, whereas now you just ask the air and you get a response back. And this is maybe looking a bit to the future with this one, but I wonder, for an audience who is new to this, they might be wondering, is this the way computing is going? Do you see that is the way we will interact with computers more and more down the line?
I think if you're able to hear and speak, I think the answer is yes. It is more socially acceptable to talk to your computers. And the smarter they get, the more personalized they get. So I think it's a very native, intuitive way to interact. One of the technologies that we have is a voice print, where we could actually have multiple people in the same household, and we would recognize their voices and provide answers based off who they are. You could ask about what's my schedule, and it'll tell you that just based off understanding the sound of your voice, and it can discern between different people. So the more advanced the technology becomes, the more personalized it could become. And having something as small as sort of the Nest Home Mini, it's an inexpensive way to get in, it's a very useful thing, the music sounds good, but talking to your device is what people are used to, or getting more used to it. Because a couple of years ago, people were really uncomfortable talking out loud, talking into their phones, but it's getting more natural. And I think you're going to see more products that will just sort of be this ambient space that it's like the Star Trek of old, computer, where's Uhura?
That is Stephen Scott in conversation with Christopher Padno, the head of accessibility at Google. What a rare opportunity to sit down with a person of Christopher's caliber. We're going to continue that conversation in a moment after I remind you how to get in touch with us. It's feedback@ami.ca on email, and of course on Twitter @DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap. When we come back on Double Tap TV, we continue the conversation Stephen Scott is having with Christopher Padno, the head of accessibility at Google. Stick around.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and review. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark Aflalo, and you guys are always invited to join the conversation. Feedback@ami.ca is the email address. On Twitter, we are @DoubleTapCanada, and use the hashtag AskDoubleTap so we can get to your questions on future shows. So Stephen Scott is in conversation with the head of accessibility at Google, Christopher Padno. We continue with that conversation right now on Double Tap TV.
The technology is moving on at a pace, of course, and keeping up is the challenge for a lot of people. How do you support customers who are new to your products?
Google has a disability support team. We launched it just recently here in Europe. Anyone today can reach out with chat support, with email support, or Be My Eyes support, which is actually one of our stronger channels. And by the end of the year, we hope to have phone support as well.
It seems to me that Google has brought accessibility into its culture, which is a big thing. It sounds as if it's recent, but the way you're talking, but actually it's probably been around for a while. But maybe in a smaller team, whereas now it's much bigger, it's much more widely discussed. What is that? Is it that Google as a company recognizes the value of disabled people more now than ever? And if it's that, then why? Or is it something else? Why is this sudden, well, not sudden change, but why has this happened? Why is this brought forward?
Google's been involved with accessibility for many, many years. But within the last 10 years, you've seen more of a shift in terms of making our products more accessible. And I'd say even in the past 2 or 3 years, there's this real significant increase in awareness and dedication towards it. I mean, here at the conference, we're hearing all these companies talking about how important it is and how we're feeling a change in culture. So I think what's happening inside Google is sort of a reflection of the zeitgeist change that's happening in culture at large. But in the past 2 or 3 years, we've really seen an increase of focus in our product areas, the businesses. They're realizing that this is a really exciting audience. This is something. It's also the right thing to do. It's a technological advantage. It's a business advantage if you have a product that is more accessible than others. All the dots are being connected, and it is a much easier argument now than it was a couple of years ago. And then you have things like Live Transcribe. It's not necessarily great for a blind or low vision audience, but the ability and recognition we got by having your phone be able to transcribe everything that's being said around you provides a momentum and excitement. And the more excitement there is, the more people are willing to work in this space.
And that's important to say, though, because you don't just create accessibility for blind people. It's pan-disability, isn't
Correct.
it? So you have lots of different options for people. Obviously, our audience are primarily blind or partially sighted, but if you have got a hearing problem or you have motor issues or whatever it might be, you have got support in Google products.
Absolutely. We have a switch access. So for people who have mobility impairments, you can navigate your device with multiple switches, single to multiple switches. We have voice access, so if you can't even move your hands or do that in a convenient way, you can talk to your device and work with it and have it react to you. On the deaf, hard of hearing side, we have a thing called sound amplifier, which will sort of maximize different areas of the different regions of hearing so you can hear better in certain situations. Or live transcribe, like which I mentioned a moment ago, which transcribes everything that's being said. In our most recent version of Android 10, it has a thing called live captions, which is on device, so it's not being sent up to the cloud, and it'll create a caption of any video on your device, even when you film yourself. Or you go on the Instagram and they have captions, we'll provide the captions for you. So we're leading into our expertise, in this case of machine learning and speech, because we have the Google Assistant and Translate. We have these skills and realize here's an excellent opportunity where we can do some real good.
Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
You know, it's not often that you get to sit down with someone of the caliber of Christopher Padno, the head of accessibility at Google, one of the biggest tech companies in the world. So a special thanks to Google for facilitating that, and a special thanks to Christopher Padno for joining us and sitting down and having that great conversation with Stephen Scott. If you guys have an opinion, by all means, please let us know. The email address is feedback@ami.ca. On Twitter, we are @DoubleTapCanada, and use the hashtag #AskDoubleTap so we can get to those questions on a future show. Again, thanks to Christopher Padno, and on behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. Thank you guys for being here. We will see you next week here on Double Tap TV.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and reviews on everything tech.
Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing Mark Aflalo and Will Latar. Integrated Described Video Specialist Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer Jennifer Johnson. Director Production Karen Nye. Director Programming Brian Perdue. VP Programming and Production John Melville. President and CEO David Arrington. Copyright 2020 Accessible Media Inc.